Hey, what's up everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. Alright. So, walking home as I often do, getting a little exercise in. Nice Sunday. And I figured I'd try to bump my gums about basketball since we've been trying to get back into the swing of things. Of course, this is going to be the first week, and I ain't do the math, but probably over 12 weeks where I'm going to be doing what I often do on this channel, figuring out when the Lakers schedule is, and then every morning trying to give you guys a video about the game, previewing everything that I think would be necessary to say, and then post-game afterward, of course, having a post-game video, and most of the time have a halftime video, although once in a while I might miss a halftime video for whatever set of reasons. But my intention is to always do 3 videos on game day at least, and that's for the Los Angeles Lakers specifically. I think 3 years ago I did the entire playoffs. I don't foresee myself being able to have the time to do that, but you never know, man. Who knows how I'll feel at a given April, because I have done it before. But yeah, man, coming up into this particular one, you know, of course we had to call Anthony Towns trade, ultimately landed him in New York. Pretty damn excited to see him in a Knicks uniform personally. I know I think he's from New York. I've been saying he's from New York, but he's from the tri-state area, Jersey, somewhere in there. And I think he's going to enjoy playing for the Knicks, probably more than he anticipates it, because obviously there's 2 things to think about. One, he's been with the Minnesota Timberwolves his entire career, through thick and thin, had a good relationship with them. He re-signed with them a couple times, if I'm not mistaken. Went through the darkest days, had some of their biggest triumphs as it pertains to making the playoffs, and then getting to the Western Conference Finals last year. I know he went into this season thinking they had a damn good shot to win the championship, and he had a damn good reason to believe he's gonna have a big part in that. And for them to not be able to keep him on the squad this upcoming year, I think it's probably very unfortunate for the man, you know. But at the same time, when you consider the fact that he's gonna be playing for a good team, what's going on, fellas? He's gonna be playing for a good team in New York, and the Eastern Conference is so much easier that he's really going to find that it's going to be less nights where he has to play his best in order to get victories, especially since he's on such a very good team. On paper, of course, you got to see how it looks together with Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart. You got to feel great about that team. Now, I hear, from what I understand, they're going to be looking to move on from Mitchell Robinson. I've been on record after the trade saying that I probably would do the same. But there's something that needs to be considered in regards to that. One, Karl-Anthony Towns really does need to play with a big man. That's why the Minnesota Timberwolves went after Rudy Gobert. You really don't want him banging with the main targets at that position. He's not particularly strong in that way. He gets pushed around, and that's not his game. So, if I'm being honest with everybody, I'm not as confident that moving on from Robinson is the best for the Knicks after giving it more thought, even though I said initially that I would. It all depends on what they can get for Robinson, and will they be able to fill that center position. Now, their shooting guard position, from what I understand, people are a little concerned about whether or not they're going to have enough shooting guards now that they've moved on from DiVincenzo. But I think Miles McBride is pretty good. He's going to be a good player for them. I don't know how he does offensively, but defensively he's proven himself to me that he can be a hell of a defensive player. They have a guy that I like that they picked up in the draft. I don't think they moved on from him. I'm pretty sure he's going to start the team. Start the season with the team is what I'm trying to say. Not start, but Pacome Dadier, man. I personally think Pacome Dadier is a player who has a lot of natural ability that's going to shine on the NBA basketball floor. And I'm not so sure that it even matters that they don't have a strong bench, in a sense that their coach is never going to play his bench any damn way, and that's kind of the problem. I think moving on from DiVincenzo might have been a mistake in the grand scheme of things, but I guess you would take that if it gets you Karl-Anthony Towns. But you know, DiVincenzo is somebody who, even if he's coming off the bench, he probably would be the only guy that really gets solid minutes off of the bench based on how Thibodeau likes to play his players. So if you're talking about the Knicks, you got to take into account that they're not going to use their bench. They have about 3 players already who can play that position, even though that's not their position. And OG Anunoby can play that. Josh Hart can play that. And you know, I think they can get away with moving Brunson to the 2 if they want to use Tyler Kolek, who they drafted, who's a smaller guy that I don't think can play some 2, but will definitely be a fantastic backup point guard. I think he was a 4-year guy, so he should be ready to contribute when asked upon. So for me, the Knicks, if you're not taking into account that the rookies are going to play, do have somewhat of a shallow guard situation, but if you work into the equation of the potential of their rookies possibly making the team and then from there getting some playing time, I'm excited about both Kolek and Dadier. But see, I'm higher on rookies than most. So if a rookie's not ready to play, that should be understandable by all, including myself, who just has a lot more faith in the talent of a rookie being able to just play in between the lines at a high level if he's good enough to be drafted. I think most rookies are able to display a certain level of adaptivity in this era and maybe wasn't available when I was a kid. Rookies coming to the league, they're a little more raw. I think most rookies are able to contribute if given an opportunity, if they're good enough to play, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that's not the consensus. Most people do not think that way. And so for me, as I look at the idea of Furkan Dadier, I know he's a natural shooting guard. I also know he's got some gifts around the perimeter and around the mid-range area. So for me, you know, I give him a shot, see if he can help me in some garbage time minutes. And maybe by the end of the season, he can earn his way into the rotation. But again, with the coach that they have, it's not likely he's going to pay any of his bench anyway. So Josh Hart's just going to get 48 minutes a game. That's pretty much how that's going to go. The thing about it is depth is important in that same breath because of the fact that you have some injury-prone players. OG Anunoby, as we talk about him a lot when we speak of the Knicks, I just think that counting him in to miss games is smart. I don't expect for him to play a lot most of the time. And so if I'm going to count the idea of him missing games, then your shooting guard position is extremely important. That's what it really comes down to. You gotta take into account the potential of him missing games and what it can do for 3 different positions that he plays: the power forward, small forward, and shooting guard position. So that's where I think they really need to, if they're gonna move on from Mitchell Robinson, it helps in that way because he's also extremely injury prone. So if you can bring in another player that doesn't have those expectations upon injury, maybe it can overall strengthen the expectations for what the Knicks can be in terms of their health. Because that's really what it comes down to. When you have OG, you got Robinson. That right there is 2 players that you're going to be paying that you expect to miss about 30 games apiece or more. And for me, when you got your coach wanting to run guys as much as he likes to run them in that starting lineup, what you end up having is underdeveloped bench roles, players not getting enough minutes to really contribute, and then being forced to rely upon them when somebody finally wears down and gets hurt. It's a bad dynamic. And that's why I don't believe in giving my starters 48 minutes. I understand having guys you want to rely upon being in tip-top shape and what having them play so much can do in that regard, but it does the same thing for wear and tear. So if you're going to have them out there and they get hurt, now what you have is that you have underplayed those bench guys, as I just said. And now you need those bench guys to play at a high enough level to make up for what it is that ultimately not only would be a hot and cold transition from getting no minutes to 48 minutes and being underutilized and underdeveloped because of the fact that you played every guy's 48 minutes and warmed down. And now you got to use these guys. So it's just a horrible dynamic I don't believe in. And I would love for Thibodeau to get it together in that regard if I'm a Knicks fan. It helps for the starters in terms of their numbers and their usage, and everybody who's in that situation who's a starter loves it. But you're losing good bench role players like DiVincenzo because he expects not to get any dang minutes in that situation. As I said before, I don't think DiVincenzo leaves the Lakers under that circumstance or leaves Miami under that circumstance because he knows he's going to get an adequate amount of minutes as a role player off the bench. But when the expectation is that your starter's going to get all the minutes, even if he's the one guy off the bench that's going to get some minutes, it's not like he probably would get in a regular situation. And so for me, I just think Thibodeau ends up setting himself up. His team ends up wearing down in the playoffs. We saw what it looked like against the Pacers. Everybody on the team was hurt. And it just comes down to wear and tear, friends. Wear and tear. You will overutilize a player and find them in positions to where they can't help you no more because they're worn down by the time you need them the most. This is the worst thing in the world for a basketball player, if you ask me. For a basketball team, rather, not necessarily a player, but the team itself. You can afford to live better if there's more of a balance in regards to the minutes divvied out amongst everyone. Maybe not complete balance, but you got to develop your bench, and if you want them to perform for you, they're going to need to develop. So that's what I'm looking at. Is he going to play these guards off of the bench at all? And if he does, I think they can help him. Pacome Dadier, Tyler Kolek, Miles McBride are three good players. I have faith in all three of their ability. So I think the Knicks are going to enjoy having that bench squad so long as Thibodeau comes off of that idea that he seems to be married to. And that's going to be my statement on the Knicks in regards to health. I really think the OG Anunoby investment will not pay dividends at all, man. I think that was a bad investment in the presence of good things that they've done. I think if they try to retrade OG Anunoby, ain't gonna get a fourth of that for that contract attached to that injury-prone player. I'm not a believer in any way other than the fact that when he's healthy, he can be a pretty damn good two-way scorer and defender, which is valuable, but not nearly as valuable as to what the investment was for the Knicks. That was a mischaracterization of what the player is expected to do on many fronts, in my opinion. So that's what's going to cap off their championship. It's his lack of availability at the end of the day. That's what it's going to be. The Knicks will not win a championship because OG Anunoby's not trustworthy, and he's eating up too much of the cap for that to be the problem. So that's my take on things. I do think it could be exciting if I'm wrong and everybody's healthy by the end of the season. Everybody looks great. I think the Knicks match up with the Celtics pretty damn well for the most part. I still have the Celtics beating them, to be honest with you. But I think when you consider the Celtics circumstances with Porzingis starting the season not 100%, and with his injury history, I'm not going to lie to you, I'd probably shop him if I'm the Celtics. I'd probably shop Porzingis. I don't think I go forward with Porzingis. I know they re-signed him. I know they look like a super team with him healthy. But how healthy is he ever is what I would ask the Celtics. You won a championship. You can afford to cash out on Porzingis. You really can. You can afford to cash out on him and try to find yourself a player that ultimately is worth the same thing he is, that can more than likely have a longer shelf life than he does. Because what's going to end up happening to the Celtics, which we all see coming, is that they're going to have to break that team up. Those guys are going to go on to probably play another 2 more years, and then you're going to start seeing guys sign elsewhere unless their price tag comes down dramatically. Derek White's next contract you expect to be up in the air. Drew Holiday's contract is already up in the air. And then you pay $300 million a piece for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You still got to take into account Peyton Pritchard, who's going to start making some money and see if he ever gets the minutes to show what he can do. It's one of those situations with the Celtics where the shelf life is not as much as people think. Obviously, their core is intact. Their trio is intact. But they're going to have to turn Porzingis into multiple pieces, maybe even future trade equity, in my opinion, which I don't know you can get for Porzingis, but you want that value in theory for the betterment of their balance. You want that. You want that. And to me, Porzingis makes you as good enough to be a champion. Maybe without him, you're not quite there. Even though you have a foursome that is still very talented in Jaylen, Tatum, Drew, and Derek White, Porzingis makes you like over the top better than everybody else. But I just don't think it's feasible to keep that together for too long. You can't afford to keep that together for too much longer. That's what it really comes down to. Unless you want to go into the luxury tax in some wild ways. And so I don't know, man. I don't know about the Celtics. Far be it for me to look at somebody who just won the championship, bringing back basically everybody, and then say they can't do it again when the East didn't get that much better. I still think they're the cream of the crop in the league right now. If I'm a betting man, I still think they have the best chance of probably winning the championship right now. But I do expect some things have changed in the league, especially in the Western Conference. Once they were to get to the finals, I think their Western Conference foe could potentially be stronger than who they just knocked off in the Dallas Mavericks this upcoming season. So, injuries told the story last year for pretty much the entire playoffs. It really did tell the story. And you don't know who's going to get bit by the bug. You don't know if it'll tell the story this year. I remember certain seasons where injuries didn't define the season. You know what I mean? I've seen so many NBA seasons at this point. There's no real way to put your finger on what to expect. You hope for good health, but you know that injuries are prevalent in this league and could define things. So it's tough, man. It's tough. I'm not gonna pretend like I know what to expect from this league from year in, from year out. Sometimes teams look great and finish great, like the Celtics did all year long. They were the best team and won the championship. No surprise to many, but that's just not what you expect to see every year. It's just not. And winning back-to-back is very difficult. As a Laker fan, we've been spoiled having 2 sets of three-peats, or rather 1 three-peat and then another 2-peat with Kobe. So we've been spoiled here. The Showtime stuff was before my time, so I can't really speak to that. But the success spoke for itself. And, that's not how it goes for everybody. That's not how it goes. It's hard to win a championship. It's hard to be good enough all season long to get through the playoffs as well. So for me, the Celtics are probably the best bet. But after watching this enough times, I don't think a 2-peat or back-to-back is a great bet any year when the team wins the championship. Everybody was so certain Denver was going to win. They were the best team starting this year last year. And it's just not how it played out, So for me, what I try to task myself with doing is trying to identify who looks exciting on paper. And though I haven't been very successful over the years, trying to figure out who has the role players that could potentially step up and break their season out in a way that maybe no one's looking for right now. And so that's what's curious to me. Because these role players have a lot to do with a lot. And with the Dallas Mavericks last year who went to the NBA Finals, it became a situation where it was the players that they ended up picking up midway through the season that ultimately were the defining players for the situation. Derek Lively, of course, being a rookie, he had a big role in that circumstance. But we're talking about guys like P.J. Washington and ultimately Daniel Gafford, who weren't a part of the situation to start the season. But by the time the end of the year, they were the determining factors, in my opinion, for them ultimately being in the finals. Along with, of course, Jones, who they got from Chicago, who was more or less on his way out the league. If it didn't work in Dallas, you don't know if he'd be playing in China right now. And he just had a fantastic season and ultimately reestablished himself as one of the most important defensive players with a lot of athleticism on the wing. So Derrick Jones Jr. with the Clippers now. I think the Clippers have some of those players. What they don't have is the stars in theory, especially with Kawhi Leonard being a player who you can't count on to stay healthy and is already having issues with his knee before the season even starts. You guys know my take on that. But if doctors say there's something wrong with the knee, then that's just what it is. But I don't trust James Harden at all at this point. I don't doubt that he can have a big game here and there, but if you're expecting him to turn back the clock and be that star, good luck. That's not what you expect he's going to be able to do. But when you look at the role players of the Clippers, I think they did a good job putting some role players together. You talk about Chris Dunn. That's a really good role player. Derrick Jones, of course, already mentioned. Re-signing Zubac, I think, is a nice player to have. I'm still a believer in Kevin Porter Jr.'s talent. I think he's going to be a good player for the Clippers, if not a fantastic player for the Clippers. Maybe their most important young piece. Terrence Mann, I'm worried about where he's headed. I just think that he's kind of gotten rocked to sleep underneath the expectations for his talent in Clipperland. But at any moment, he could step back into a player that could play well, very well, and really help on both sides of the floor. So Terrence Mann is somebody you should circle as someone who needs to have a good season this year. I'm still a Kobe Brown fan. I know a lot of people are writing him off as somebody who probably hasn't made it, but I mean, he was just drafted last year in the second round. It's too early to even make that type of assessment about that guy. I still think he's going to help this team a lot. I really like what the Clippers put together, to be honest with you. I really do. I think they put together some of the better acquisitions for role talent in the Western Conference. But if you don't have the stars, then they can overachieve in the regular season, probably only win about 38 games, and that'll be it. And so that's what I expect. But if they could get somehow the star-level talent that otherwise goes well with those type of role players, I think that can immediately vault them into contention, immediately. Because they do have those role players that make you say, yo, man, that's a team that I can fight with in the playoffs. And, far be it from me to root for the Clippers. I would never do that as a Laker fan. But they got role guys that I think are going to be really, really nice. And maybe the answer for them is to trade most of them dudes for that star. Since they do have such good role players, at the trade deadline, if I could slap 6 of them together and get myself a star, I might do that if I'm the Clippers. Because they ain't got no picks from here to Texas, man. There's no picks anywhere in sight for the Clippers. And with Kawhi Leonard being as he is, Paul George signing outright elsewhere, which is horrible for their asset class, and then James Harden being the only other talent on the team that you would accuse of being a star, that's an awful star tandem right now. It's an awful star tandem. Let's just be honest. Terrible. Kawhi Leonard, if he's healthy, of course he's one of the best players we've ever seen, period. But at this point, expecting him to be healthy is just silly. Like, that's stupid at this point. That's how ridiculous his health has been. It's like, if you penciling him in to play more than 40 games, you're fooling yourself. And the only time he was able to do that was when it was his money on the line. You know what I mean? It was the only time when I could play every day now. Yeah, when you're trying to get a contract. So for me, I don't know why Ballmer continues to do this with Kawhi Leonard. I really don't. It's one of the biggest mysteries to me in this league, why Kawhi Leonard is still on the damn Clippers. I would have traded him for a good package 3 years ago, man. I'd have let him go. And I still think they can get a good package for him right now. Because by name, he's still a hell of a talent. And for some of the teams who don't need him to play a star role, if he's like the second or third guy, that's a championship team. That's the reality of it. You put Kawhi Leonard in the right situation where they can prepare for themselves to lose him from 30 games, and can afford to with the rest of their talent to soften the blow in regards to him not being on the floor. Oh, that's a hell of a team he's a part of. But because they still need him to be a number one, I think they're just shooting themselves in the foot. There's no way in hell. There's absolutely no way in hell, man. I don't know how many times I got to learn a lesson to start, behaving as if I understand it. When it comes to Kawhi Leonard, I didn't learn this lesson for 4 or 5 years straight, man. It's time to stop, Ballmer. It really is time to stop, dude. I don't expect he'll trade Kawhi Leonard, but if I were him, I would. I would. I'd trade him before the start of the season, yo. Kid you not. And if I could trade James Harden for anything that I like, I'd trade James Harden too, quickly. Both of them. Get them out of here. In fact, I think that might be the only path to them really having a future, man. Because you can see a path where, because they don't have any picks and because they're starting, their stars aren't worth anything, in theory, not in comparison to other teams' stars, they're not worth anything, Harden and Kawhi, it probably is in their best interest to start all the way over. Trade anything that they can get futures for, trade it all. trade it all and just start over. I really would, man, because the Clippers, their ceiling is capped off at play-in tournament at this point. And if Kawhi Leonard retires and dissipates into nothing like Paul George did in regards to leaving their organization with nothing in return, that's a killer right there. And the chances of him doing that, I think, are sky high. He could retire any minute, if you ask me. So rather than allow my team to fall into that level of ineptitude for years and years to come, I'm going to take anything that anybody wants off of my team and trade it for future picks and just live with that right now. Give myself a future. Maybe when I get all those picks, retrade it for stars if I can, but I don't see no other path for the Clippers to not being absolutely the worst team in the world 3 years from now and staying that way for like 4 years. They just ain't got no path to nothing, man. They really don't. And so I think their best bet is trading stuff that looks pretty good. The Derrick Jones Jr.'s and some of these players, the Kobe Brown, play these guys up to a certain level and then move them for whatever you can get that looks like future assets. If it's a young player, great. If it's a, you know what I mean? That's the type of thing I think the Clippers really, really need to do, whether they know it or not. But that they know it would probably be in their best interest at this point, and not living in a fantasy land where Kawhi Leonard and James Harden drag what they have to a championship. It's just not, that's not real at all, you guys. That's not real. And so that's really my point of view. I'm not mad at the Clippers necessarily for getting really good role players and just doing the best they can, because they got this new building that they have to be attractive in. But that's the problem. Like, forcing yourself to be attractive in this building to start is setting back any chance that they have a good team in that building anytime soon. And that's a problem. And honoriness, so to speak. And so you got to sacrifice something. And I think while the building is new, people will come just to watch other teams in that building. You can go through the rebuilding process right now, soften the blow on any excess bad that would otherwise be coming from not rebuilding if you just sacrifice the next 2 years. So I don't know. Mortgaging all their picks for Paul George and then fast forward to where we are right now with him signing with the 76ers, that was like, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous way to handle your assets. That should have never even been possible. That should have never been possible, man. And this is what I talk about in regards to my Laker team. Certain things you don't let happen for the risk of it being bad, being too bad to handle. You feel me? Like, I'm not gonna walk myself into a situation where my crossroads has it so that one path is absolutely going to hell and the other path is like things kind of being stable. I'm cutting that off before we even get to that crossroads. Whatever leads me to that crossroads is what needs to be derailed. And I think that's what it really came down to. They should have traded Paul George well before it got to this point. Well before it got to this point. And leading him to believe, if he told the story the way that it went, he was led to believe that he was going to be making a certain amount of money, and then they lowballed him. You're shooting yourself in the foot. At least if you would have gave him the contract that he wanted, you would have been able to ink him to some kind of contract that you could then trade. Even if you're not getting the greatest trade return for him, at least he's not nothing. At least you didn't let him disappear into nothing. You traded several future first-round picks for him. An MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for him. Like, that cannot happen. That cannot happen. For that player to not garner you any return, it capped off the Clippers ceiling at well below good enough. Well below. And for a team with the history that they have, that should not have been possible. That should not have been possible. With them having to compete with the Lakers in Los Angeles, there's no way in hell you let that even be possible, man. So the Clippers' ineptitude continues. And though it doesn't necessarily look like it right now, their future is probably the most bleak of any team in the league right now. Any team in the league. It's the bleakest team. They're going to go forward the way that they started, being the laughingstock of the entire NBA. unless they do something that I don't see coming. Unless somebody on their team plays so good that they become desirable in this league in a way that they're not right now. That's the only way. And then they'd be willing to trade that player at that point. Otherwise, Clipper fans, y'all going to continue to have bad years, man. It's going to be worse going forward than it's been all the last 10 years where y'all was celebrating all the stuff that just happened, even though it wasn't good enough to win anything. It's going to be worse, a lot worse. So that's something that's inevitable. I don't even think that's a prediction. That's what it looks like it's going to be. Like, a prediction has holes in it that maybe could go one way or another. The Clippers not being any good 3 years from now, it ain't too many paths where they are any good 3 years from now based on what their asset class looks like right now. There ain't too many paths. And so the urgency for them to try to fix that problem should be at a 10 out of 10, to be honest with you. DEFCON 1 type stuff. Like, it's as bad as it gets. And so, yeah, I don't expect for them to fix that problem at all. I don't. I just expect for them to go down the path of being the Clippers they've always been all my life, man. 40 years of watching them not be good enough. 30 years of watching them be the most ridiculous team in sports. So, that they would turn back to being that, no shock to me. And that's why I talk so much about my Lakers in regards to asset responsibility and not wanting to mortgage our future picks for role players and stuff like that, because you'll be right there with them. You'll be right there with them. And I do not want to see what the league looks like when both the Lakers and the Clippers suck to hell. I do not want to see what that looks like. And the only teams worth watching are Utah and OKC. You talk about a nightmare for the GM, for the commissioner. The future's looking bleak if that happens. Golden State sucking too, man. Listen, the California teams better get their act together, man. I'm telling you. I understand that a lot of big markets have a certain appeal that allows for them to consider the fact that they could take certain risks that smaller markets can't. But the problem that you're running into is these teams are going to suck so bad that anybody that knows what they're doing is not going to sign with you. As far as free agents, if they know anything about anything, if they have any desire to win whatsoever, they're going to stay the hell away from these LA teams who've mortgaged every damn thing. Because the only thing worth it about being here is the money and the lifestyle that you can get from living in Los Angeles. Playing on the basketball floor is going to be a waste of time if these teams don't get their act together. Both of them. I'm just going to be honest with you. And as I said, the best teams are going to be in the middle of middle America, where nobody wants to do anything but play basketball. That's exactly where the best team's about to be. So if you're cool with that, if you don't mind rooting for small market teams with your big market teams all being terrible without having any picks, so they're not going to be drafting any good guys either, yeah, I suggest we stay on the path we on, because that's exactly what it's looked like it's about to turn into, man. So, yeah, man, hopefully that derails somehow. You get lucky and maybe get some of your second round picks turning into stars. That's the best way away from that. You know what I mean? You get some Draymond Greens and some Emmanuel Ginobili's. That's your best path to not having to deal with that crap. But yeah, man, that's my point of view on that. I try to figure out if there's some teams that I never talk about. Certain teams just do not interest me at all, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of them might be big market teams, like the Miami Heat. I don't really talk too much about the Miami Heat, man. I think a lot of what's going on with the Heat could potentially be underrated, though, when you consider they picked up the Khalil Ware piece, and you could slap him next to Bam Adebayo. I think that could potentially be very, very interesting in the Eastern Conference. Yeah, that's interesting to me. And then the idea that maybe they want to move on from Jimmy Butler, that's curious. I tell you, a player that I usually don't pick up a lot in fantasy basketball that I did invest in a bit more this year is Terry Rozier, surprisingly enough. He's starting the season healthy, and though he's not the greatest bet to stay healthy, I thought that him moving on from Charlotte was a big deal because he was in a bit of a logjam there with LaMelo Ball and a bunch of other guards, right? Had him playing shooting guard. And he never really got a chance to really play that point guard position. I think he was always born to play. Before that, he was stuck in Boston behind 2 and 3 people. So he's always been a guy who you thought, if given an opportunity and healthy enough to utilize that opportunity, could potentially put up all-star numbers on a night-to-night basis. I think this could be the first year where he's actually going to have that opportunity in his entire career. I really think that, in a situation where people are actually paying attention to him specifically. Because he may have had that in one of them Charlotte years, but nobody cared. You know what I mean? And he didn't stay healthy for it. But this is the year where he's going to have plenty of rim protection. It's not a guard log jam type situation. He's going to be asked to be himself, and he's starting the season with a Miami Heat team that he finished the season with last year. So as to where he was picked up midway through the season last year, if I'm not mistaken, that was one of those situations where he had to get adjusted. The first month or so was not really a great month for him. He had to get acclimated into what it is that they were. Well, he has a chance to do training camp with them right now, and from there get a chance at a healthy start to a season with a team that people care about and a team that he's going to have an opportunity to shine on. I think this is probably potentially a career year situation for Terry Rozier. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the year where he found himself being all-star eligible. Now, whether or not he makes all-star team, we've seen guys get snubbed. It's a damn good chance he gets snubbed if he is all-star eligible. But assuming health stays what it needs to be, I don't see any reason why Terry Rozier can't have a fantastic year this year. I don't see no reason. It's all lining up for him to have a good year, man. So that's something I'm paying attention to. And also, when I consider the Miami Heat, of course, you want to talk about Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is a guy who really does have fantastic skills, but he's made out of glass. I don't trust him to stay healthy, man, at all. At all. And so, to be honest with you, they're talented together as a backcourt. They really are. Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero, you could expect them both to have good games on a night-to-night basis, but you also expect both of them to miss about 40 games a year. So for me, I'm probably not going to go forward with both of them. I know Miami's married to the idea of Tyler Hero because, of course, they drafted him. He really is a good player. You still expect that he's going to have his best games ahead of him. He's going to have good years in the future. But just the same, you can expect for him to start have injury issues pile up and ultimately cap off his ceiling just the same. It's an either-or type situation. And I don't love it. I don't love it for the Miami Heat. I don't love it. I like both of those players, but not in the same situation. Just like I say about the Lakers situation with D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves. For different reasons, I feel that way about Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero. I just don't need them both on the same team. I really don't. So, for my money, I'm probably moving Tyler Hero. I think I can get more for Tyler Hero. Probably going to have to pay more for Tyler Hero going forward. But, yeah, I don't know that they have any interest in moving him. This is me talking. I would. I don't think they are going to. No, I don't think they have any interest at all. But I would, man. I would. I don't particularly think they're going to be able to stop anybody either one of them in a backcourt together. I don't think that's a very good defensive backcourt. But with the presence of Bam Adebayo and now Khalil Ware, who could potentially be in the same lineup with one another, which could be really interesting if they decide to go that route. If Khalil plays the way he did in the summer league, which is not a great bet, to be honest with you. Guys can kill it in the summer league and suck in the real league. But if he can do what his body type looks like it should be able to do, and if the motor's there, look out, because the Miami Heat may have picked up a Rookie of the Year candidate, man, in Khalil Ware, man. They may have, And so that's what I'm interested in. Is Khalil Ware going to be that guy? Are they going to use him in the same lineup with Bam? Is he coming off the bench for Bam? Either way, it could be a positive for the Heat. And I would be more optimistic that piece turns the Heat into something a bit better than they were last year, man. Coupled with Jaime Jaquez coming back, starting the season healthy. He ain't getting no worse. The Heat are a team that, they have more talent this year than they did last year. They got more talent right now than they had the year before last, in my opinion. I think that. And so I don't know what type of year they expect Jimmy to have. I don't know if they're going to shop him. I don't know if he's still unhappy. That situation is not really clear to me. Like I said, I don't pay that much attention to the Heat and what they got going on. But I'm very curious to see what they look like this year to start the season. I don't think really any outcome would be particularly surprising, other than them bottoming out and being one of the worst teams in the league. I don't expect that. But, they're a team that's shown they can do a whole lot with not as much. And they probably have the best coach in basketball. So that right there is something interesting to me to pay attention to. A team that I don't talk about much. I think they're pretty interesting this year. I got to see what they have on their bench. Their depth is not clear to me, but the players that I did mention alone give you some reasons to think that they could be a pretty solid team this year, if not good. If not good. So that's what comes to mind. Philly is curious to me too, man. I don't know if Philly won't be one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference this year. I don't know that. Picking up Paul George, I think could be a good piece for them. The rookie that they got, I think could be a hell of a rookie this year. What's his name, man? The one that does all the TikToks and stuff like that. People lose sight of how good of a player he is because of all the antics and stuff that he has going on off the court. But he's a hell of a player. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. And so when you consider his piece, and then, they got Adem Bona off the bench. They picked up, who else? They picked up, what's his name, used to play for the Heat. Caleb Martin is now there. They moved on from Tobias Harris, but they upgraded with Paul George, in my opinion. Tyrese Maxey's paid, should be ready to start the season. Expect him to have an all-star year. I don't know that Joel's ever really a good bet to stay healthy. To be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Joel staying healthy anymore. I don't. We're back to where we were when he first got drafted. They did a good job of getting him there, but then the usage went up, the injuries piled up, and they asked him to play on those injuries, which is always bad for a big man like him. I don't know why they didn't take the approach of, okay, he's not going to be good enough health-wise to keep us going in these playoffs. Let's shut him down. But they sent him back out there, and he got hurt again. And now, start the season, I just don't have a whole lot of faith in him staying healthy for 82 games. So, of course, their ceiling is capped off by the idea that he will either go down or stay healthy. And that is not a great bet for me. JoJo, I don't trust JoJo's body, man. I never have. It was looking good for a couple years there, but now we're back. And I just don't. That's a bad investment, asking him to be available so that your team can win a championship. I just don't think that's a good bet anymore. I don't. Now, maybe he had a very good offseason. I don't think losing weight would be a bad idea. Maybe he could lose like 30, 40 pounds. I think that if he came back lighter, it might take a little weight off of his legs. But I don't suspect that he made any of those changes, to be honest with you. And so if he comes back looking the way he did last year, it's going to be tough for me to see him winning a championship. I just think his usage could come down, given the fact that Tyrese Maxey may be willing to step up. And, of course, Paul George, if healthy, is still somebody who's going to do a lot of damage. He's going to start to age in a Philadelphia uniform. So we need to be ready for that, Philly fans. Paul George, I do not expect, is going to look as good as he looked with the Clippers with you for much longer. This is more like when Shaq got to Miami. You got about one more year of prime Shaq and it's over. That's what I think. That's exactly what I think of Paul George. But Paul George is always going to be able to stretch the floor. He's always going to be a good defender. Even if the athleticism isn't there, even if he has to play the four more because he slows down or something like that, and isn't really a dunkathon guy anymore, he should still be able to kill it from the mid-range till well after he leaves the game. I expect for him to be able to hit jumpers forever. So that can be good for spacing no matter what level of Paul George you get. But when you consider how much they've invested in him, the contract they gave him, you don't want him aging the way I expect for him to age. You don't want that. So I think in the long run, that's an awful contract. But in the short term, if they can capitalize and maybe win a championship, they'll feel great about it. And maybe even able to trade him before that contract balloons. I wouldn't bet on it, though. I wouldn't bet on either of that. So, yeah, Philly's interesting to me, man. They need the rookie to step up and really be a hell of a piece. He's going to be healthy. He needs to be a dog out there. And if he's able to be what it is I expect him to become, he will cushion a lot of what goes on with their asset class by being on a rookie contract, playing at a higher level next to Tyrese Maxey is expected to play. So, that's going to be real there. Kelly Oubre as well. If he has a healthy season, which I don't know if it's a great bet either, to be honest with you. Kelly Oubre tends to miss games, tends to go down. You never quite know with him he could either play like a star or he could disappear. So kind of inconsistent. I have him in like the D'Angelo Russell range of things. Kelly Oubre. You just don't really know what you're getting out of him, but when he's good, he's really good. So I don't know. I think he could be a good piece for Philly this year. He played with him last year, had a pretty solid season. And also a nice trade piece to move and get a decent return for. So that's what I think. I might be active in the trade market if I'm Philadelphia. I might be active. Depending on how the first half of the season goes, I may move some stuff to try to get myself a bit more stability, man. I think some stability there would be really helpful for them. And so that's it. That's what I got to say about Philly. I think they have a nice team, and I wouldn't be surprised of really any outcome there. The Eastern Conference is getting better, but they're still not where you expect. You would say they're a much better conference than the West or anything like that, but they're going to be better this year than they were last year, I think. The Pacers should come back strong. Orlando, their young talent should continue to develop, look even better this year. Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero. Hopefully they can start utilizing the rookies and the guys they picked up last year as well. Anthony Black. Who else did they get? Tristan Da Silva. I'm just going to be curious to see if they utilize some of those guys to better the fullness of their roster rotation. And I don't think they're a particularly shallow team at all. They have plenty of depth, and I'm very curious about Orlando this year. Cleveland, I'm a big Jalen Tyson guy. And y'all know, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm a believer that rookies can contribute more than most of the league believes they can. Jalen Tyson is somebody I think could become a real rotation piece for them. If he slots in as a nice off-the-bench dude, look out for the Cleveland Cavaliers to be a better team this year. Look for them to be a better team. Now, health is going to tell the story, but Donovan Mitchell got paid, if I'm not mistaken. They still haven't traded Darius Garland. I don't think they're going to. They're going to have to find a way to work together. They still have everybody. They didn't make any moves, but they did bring in Jalen Tyson, and I think that boosts their overall bench depth. So I'm curious about the Cleveland Cavaliers as well. They found some things last year, some pieces that they utilized. I don't remember exactly what homie's name was. I think it's Porter, their shooting guard. They found him out of nowhere. I think that's a good find. I think his name is Porter. I might be wrong. But they got a guy there that, while Garland was out last year, stepped up into the point guard position and made a name for himself. I think those type of things are very important to pay attention to. So Cleveland has a better team just off of the strength of some of their guys getting older. Some of their younger guys are getting more refined, and their core is not old at all. Mobley, year 4. You're excited about that. Allen, still young. All of that looks pretty good to me. Max Strus is on for another year. He had a pretty good year with him last year. Cleveland's curious, man. I expect for them to make the playoffs in a weak Eastern Conference. I expect for them to make the playoffs. Who else, man? There was another team that just came to mind. Oh, a team that I don't expect to make the playoffs, but I am curious about what they've picked up. In Toronto. I'm very curious about what they have. Grady Dick coming back year 2. That's a hell of a shooter. Then you look at Baylor that they picked up in the draft this year. That's a hell of a shooter. Okay. Now you look over at RJ Barrett. Very good player. Definitely expect for him to have a good year this year at home in Toronto. Emmanuel Quickley, who's always better than he gets opportunity to show. With the Knicks, coming off the bench, he showed he's a starter. He's going to get some minutes this year that should allow for him to be his best self. And you look at the players they picked up on their bench, the young guys. Davion Mitchell, lockdown defensive player. Jamal Sheed, lockdown defensive player. It's like, all right, hold on now. So for me, I'm not saying they're going to be a good team, but I am saying that you can pick certain pieces on their roster and feel really, really confident that they're putting something together that maybe could shock some people, upset some teams that think they could take a night off coming into Toronto and get your butt whooped by Scotty Barnes and the rest of them dudes. They do not lack talent there. Do the pieces fit? I don't think so. I don't think the pieces fit. But from player to player to player to player to player, they got something. And that's what I'll say about Toronto. I don't expect them to be a winning team, but they're going to beat some good teams. They're gonna have some teams come in thinking it's going to be a good night for them, and they're going to beat those teams. That's what I think of the Toronto Raptors. And I think they would absolutely love to win the lottery if they have their pick. This could be a year where if they could get a guy like Cooper Flagg, they're right back in the mix as a team now you got to be excited about going forward. So, yeah, Toronto's not as far away as a bad team usually is. Put it like that. They're not as far away as a bad team usually is. They're a bad team, but they got some really good talent there. So that's what I'm saying. Toronto, I don't expect much, but damn it, I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't be wanting to make a trade with Toronto with most of these teams in the league. They have stuff that you want on their team. So that's what I'll say about the Toronto Raptors. So that's pretty much my thought, man. That's the gist of it. I'm where I need to be now. I appreciate everybody for watching BDF 44. I'm out.